Just a slight tangent on that.
This is far too much of a tangent. Just a brief interruption.
Can I also say one more thing on this?
But we also need to impose some rules. Like, we can't just have 20-minute tangents over a text.
Come on. That's just refusal to consider the circumstances. We're not going to entertain that, Joe.
This conversation is not a good one, I think. Do we argue much?
No, we keep them inside.
Let it fester.
See, I thought this was a ridiculous text until I read the top three, and then I thought, you know what? I'd actually debate that with you. It is an interesting... Sorry, it's not an interesting question, but...
Let's make that clear.
I love the sound of a snooker referee counting up the score.
Oh, welcome along. A glorious return for a slight tangent. We were away from you last week. We're back now. Will O'Callaghan here, Mick McCarthy here, Arthur O'D here. You're all very welcome. This time last week, pesky Stuart Lancaster was taking up the hour. But now, Arthur, you're back.
Yeah, like for like. Great rugby men.
The room bereft at the thought of a blue tick costing $8 a month on Twitter. Swearing, we won't do it, but then sometimes thinking... Quite like the blue tick, though.
Do we all have one blue tick?
What's another €8 subscription for something or other?
I don't.
No, I don't. You two are blue ticks.
All right. I don't even know.
That wasn't a vanity project, by the way. That was a company thing years ago where somebody went and organised it for everyone who was working here at the time. It wasn't something that we went and
held on to, though.
Well, I mean, there's no... can you even get rid of it? I don't know.
If you change your username, you will. That's what happened to Phil Egan. And... might have been approved to be done, and our emails changed, and they approved it, and I haven't looked for it since.
Right.
Okay, well, won't be paying €8 a month for it.
No. Take it, Elon.
Yeah, I mean, I'll lose my priority of replies, oh no.
How is it going to help the situation?
I want to tweet into the ether anyway and nobody to see them.
Yeah.
That's much better, because it's the vent without the consequences of the vent.
Well, my Twitter life is generally spent tweeting something and then deleting it within 40 seconds. And just thinking, what's the point of even tweeting that?
Yeah.
It's generally...
the other thing is...
You know what? I wish I did that a little bit more often. I think I'd be better. My life would be better if I didn't.
Absolutely. That's my logic. Why am I inviting replies to this is basically the thing that makes me delete it almost instantly.
But also, if you're a verified account, straight away the assumption is, oh my God, I can't believe a verified account has made a joke, or you're trolling about this, etc., etc. It actually changes the perception of how people interact with your tweets.
Oh, maybe. Well, remains to be seen. I mean, it's going to make it much easier to impersonate people, isn't it? It's going to...
That's a good point.
Open that wide open, you know?
Yeah, it wasn't there for status.
No.
It was there to show that you're the person you say you are.
I don't think anyone looked at a blue tick and said, well, this must be a very impressive person.
People did, though. That's actually, that was the kind of consequence of it. But I mean, it just shows you that there's just a Twitter user has just bought it and is going by... Anyway, look, we don't need to get into Elon Musk stuff.
No, sorry, that came up in the news just there. So, different bits and bobs going on. The IRFU's confirmed Ireland will be wearing their navy blue jersey against South Africa. He'll be wearing their dark green kits, so a la 2017, with just a little bit of fog thrown in. Fingers crossed, you won't be able to tell which team has the ball for huge portions of the match. Strange decision. Mick has already voiced his displeasure on the news round.
Won't stop him doing it again.
No.
I was about to say, come on lads, get your opinions out there so I can say more.
It's very hard to disagree with your point. It's just an odd situation. The one team that we need an away jersey for, we seem to have modelled our away jersey on.
Is it just for money, just to get an outing, or is it just an odd? Could they not just? Yeah. Well, why does this happen? Is there any reason for this? Is there anything I'm missing out on?
Well, the home team has to wear their away jersey when there's a clash of kits, and it just so turns out that our away jersey is also quite clashy.
Okay. So it's probably more so effective that they're willing to suck that up to sell what might be a more appealing jersey generally.
But sorry, is a navy jersey more appealing to the consumer than a white jersey? I thought the white jerseys were nice, no?
See, I think the logic on this one, Joe, and this went for... Leinster used to traditionally wear blue and white as well. You had a dark kit and then you had a light change kit.
Yeah. Was
that supporters will buy jerseys less frequently if the white jersey looks like the previous white jersey. So therefore you get purples, you get these...
Okay.
You remember the crazy highlighter green that had the kind of... what looked like a tank had rolled over it a couple of years ago. And so you go for slightly wilder designs and then consumers are more likely to purchase them. I think life was just a lot easier when you actually changed for the sake of the kits being different. So I think as South Africa back in maybe 05, 06 when they came to Dublin, wore their white strip. Ireland had quite a dark green at the time and everyone could see what was happening. And now this idea...
No, Ireland were changed in Dublin, but it was probably the other way around. Yeah, you know, like it was the famous one where O'Gara took that cheeky tap penalty that absolutely shouldn't have been allowed. Ireland were wearing a class white jersey that day, like just really, really nice. But looks good in the field. But again, I still think you're probably more likely to buy a navy jersey to wear with a pair of jeans to the pub than you are a white jersey.
You don't see many around, I would say.
Ireland jerseys in general.
Away ones.
No, possibly not. Do people just wear jerseys? Rugby jerseys aren't exactly the most wearable anymore, anyway. Especially for me, but for I think for a lot of people, it's just more like workout gear now than like you would have worn a rugby jersey back in the day
when they were flowing.
When there's a bit of room.
Yeah,
more forgiving for the husky gentleman.
Yeah. So that's
just
that.
on that,
no
though,
changing that.
there is an interesting contrast though in terms of rugby allowing this. So like FIFA go too far the other way, and say like, you know, the Argentina and Germany not wearing black shorts because there needs to be predominantly light versus predominantly dark, and there's confusion over what the actual rules are of those things. But in World Cups it tends to be that, and that's why we haven't seen a lot of traditional kits in the last few years. England as well wearing all white a lot of the time, you know. There's a misunderstanding there a lot of the time of like from people like me who just want tradition, that like there is a colourblind community that are, you know, so happy with this, that this is actually for the first time ever they have been catered for in football. American sports, it seems to be the only ones that ever kind of cared about this before. And then for rugby it feels weird that they're just allowing this, whereas actually would never have been the case back in the old days, because it would have been Scotland would have worn white against New Zealand, Ireland would have worn white against South Africa and whatever else, and they were the only clashes. Whereas now it's just like, no problem at all basically wearing colours that people won't be able to differentiate between. I just find it strange in a sport that's trying to grow and trying to become more international. This is going to be the number one team in the world versus the world champions and possibly perceived best team in the world. It's the biggest game in November.
Yeah, for sure. Jonathan Liu is writing a piece. It caught your eye, Arthur.
Oh, 100, yeah.
So in effect here he's talking about the commentary business, and he's harking back to the days of Davies, Motts and Moore. He said these days, of course, hard to recreate that sense of wonder that was there when they took the mic. Largely this is down to the sheer crushing volume of live football, and he's wondering what is the point of commentators these days. So when commentators were very much necessary, pictures were fuzzy, everyone needed a little help recognising which player was which. Does this still hold true in an age of 4K Ultra HD, names on shirts, augmented reality and overlay graphics? The technology exists to identify players with far greater accuracy and speed than a human commentator ever could. I don't agree with that, by the way. I still think you need a commentator to identify a player, I have to say, but maybe that's just me. In which case, what purpose does the human serve? If you were starting football from scratch, would you still have these guys chattering away in the background? If not, what's the point of them now? And he's saying as well that weirdly the commentator's real job these days is to remind us when we need to run back from the kitchen or to get us to look away from our phone. So he says there are all kinds of commentator, the excitable type, the wit and whimsical type, the watch along on YouTube type. But he poses this question: somewhere in a splintered market, there may just be an audience out there for the very opposite. Football without any commentary. Just a viewer, a screen, and the seductive ambient noise of the game. A sparser broadcast, but one that feels all the more immersive as a result, as close to the live experience as it's possible to get.
Maybe if you're watching with friends. Like it's like a very, typically enough, like it's very well written in a certain sense, and it's very interesting argument, but it kind of just seems a bit silly, even when you're kind of reading it back there. Like it doesn't, I'm not sure what that's, like it's very funny. So it's very, when he was talking about that image of watch with no commentary, it struck back. I think Andy Lee at some point made the comment about watching boxing back and you watch it without the commentary on. It can be a completely different fight to what you're being told as you're watching it. And there's kind of, that makes a degree of sense where there are fewer definitive things. So like, you know, barring a knockout or whatever, like it is really quite, anything could happen a lot of the time. I find watching these things, especially if it's anyway tight. But like football is full of definitive things. It's completely definitive actions. It's almost too definitive now with VAR. Everything is very, very, very straightforward and very apparent. And if you reduce it just to that, watching on your own as you're watching it play out with no sort of thing, becomes a very, I feel like, isolated type experience. You have that sort of colour commentator and the people talking, and that's what becomes more immersive rather than just the football. I feel. I don't know. Like, that would be my opinion of it. I found a weird kind of, almost, you don't want to say an argument for the sake of making an argument, but it didn't strike me as something sincere.
It's a very strange experience if you sit down and watch a game with just the ambient sound. Sometimes it's available to do so on the red button. I remember particularly on BBC where you could watch without commentary, or you could put the BBC 5 Live commentary. It's one of those things they kind of tinkered around with. And for the first little while you kind of go, that's interesting. I'm listening to this as if I'm inside the ground. And then I don't know whether it's because you're conditioned to commentary being over sports, it then starts to feel very weird. And like, I think the best commentators and the best analysts can add massively to the enjoyment of watching the occasion. I know that Jonathan is talking about some of the, banal comments and things that are used to fill time within a commentary. And sometimes, some commentators will choke maybe with the commentary that they use compared to just letting the pictures tell the story. But ultimately, I think it enhances it. The boxing one is an interesting one, though, because I remember I was watching Usyk against Joshua a couple of months ago, and I watched it on an American commentary stream, which was a lot more minimal than the UK one. And then I re-watched the Sky Sports coverage, which was on YouTube a couple of days later. And it was really weird how it almost felt like the commentary team were telling you that the fight was a lot closer than it was, because it felt like they were cheerleading for Joshua. And to Andy Lee's point, it can feel like a totally different experience having watched two different broadcasts. It's amazing what a difference a partisan commentary can actually make on an occasion. But generally, I think it adds to it. I don't know what the two boys feel. I think it's much better than the ambient sound to actually have some kind of soundtrack behind it.
Oh yeah, no, I'd be lost without it. I mean, no one's endorsing bad commentary at the start.
No,
That's
exactly. That is obvious.
But Martin Tyler and Gary Neville, yes please, every day of the week.
But it's television as well. The idea that you just want to sit there, like you go to a game for that ambience, you watch it, it's a television programme. The idea that you'd sit there in silence for 2 hours.
Well, it's not silence. You get the crowd.
I know, but
and the argument is there that, and to be fair, I think to Jonathan Lew, he's saying something we haven't actually discussed that much. And he's saying technology has changed so much that the need for a commentator isn't the same as it was when television pictures weren't as good. So now, actually, is there a market for just the crowd and that sense of being at the game?
Do you still get replays? I'm just wondering, are you still getting the same? No, because I mean, are you trying to get? But yeah, so you're not just trying to get the... Because I mean, one thing that I like, if you go to a game, there's at least twice during a match where I will text, what was that for? Or what happened there? So
it's the same feed. We've got Marseille Spurs on at the moment, which is 0-0. Just, it's that, but just the crowd noise turned up.
Yeah.
And no commentary team.
I wouldn't mind trying it, but I do think that... I just think Arthur's point about the almost loneliness of it all is, I think,
dystopian
the key one.
that's sitting there.
There is.
I mean, you're listening to, in some ways, a conversation with you and the two commentators. Like, I even find, you ever watch like an old match with just a single commentator, like whatever match a day, like a full 90 minutes with just a single commentator?
Yeah.
One, I don't know how they did it, they were brilliant. But two is like, it feels strange. Now, maybe it's all about what we're conditioned towards. And if like Jonathan's, if Jonathan's was the norm, maybe we'd be saying the idea of talking over it would be bananas. So like there is an element of what we're conditioned towards. I find it, look, commentators can be bad a lot of the time, and co-commentators that don't necessarily add to the game, but are they not part of what, like, is it not part of it? Is it not part of watching a match going, oh, Ronnie Whelan is on RTE, he's going to be giving out about everything now. He thinks everyone should just score when they get the ball. And like, I love when Ronnie's doing a game. That's way better than a quote unquote good announcer who doesn't actually add anything to it. They're just sort of offering something grey and straight.
Yeah.
I think there's a part, as you said, nobody's endorsing bad commentary.
No.
I think there's a part of it. I think the conversation around football and sport, often, like, the television coverage is a huge part of it, and it doesn't have to be perfect. And we come back to this a lot, don't we? Like, we're normally talking about panels rather than commentaries. But I just think life and real characters are what we want, as opposed to maybe some of the stuff that Jonathan's talking about there. But I don't think it's nothing. I don't think that's the solution.
Well, I think back to when Man City won the Premier League, and Sergio Aguero scores the last second winner. If you'd been listening to that with just the ambient sound, it would still have been a remarkable moment and tremendous drama. But Martin Tyler's commentary adds to the soundtrack.
Yeah, I would think so as well.
Like his voice in the commentary is burned into my brain every time you now think back about that moment.
Yeah.
It enhances it.
So it's a no from everyone, is it?
Well, when Robbie Brady scored against Italy, I remember there was pieces like, his commentaries from around the world and all the, and I've done that a few times, and they're like, again, I just think that it's so much a part of what the great moments in sport are.
I also think quite a lot of matches are dull enough with some tidy midfield play, keeping things largely taking over. And at that stage, if Martin Tyler and Gary Neville are musing on something, I mean, that enhances the experience massively, yeah. Now, obviously, look, bad commentators will also ruin a game of football for me.
Do they? Yeah, you can't just...
Yeah, no, I mute a lot of commentators.
Yeah.
I'm just like, I'm not listening.
Who do you mute, Joe? Come on.
Yeah, well, there we go.
I watched the entire World Cup, right, with my cousin. We were only kids. This was the 98 World Cup, so we were like 13, 14. And my cousin, we watched every game that was on. We used to have UTV back then, before you had to, learn codes to get it. And every time Ron Atkinson spoke for the entire World Cup, we pressed mute. And I would press it again a couple of seconds later to see had he stopped talking yet. It got quite annoying after a few games. I have to say, I started not going over to his house to watch the matches anymore.
It's amazing how much I miss Clive Tilsley when he was unceremoniously ditched, in effect.
Yeah.
It was just a big loss. And maybe it's a generational thing. And you've got all the memories in '99 and those 90s European nights. But I also thought he had that touch of craft and quality that added to an occasion. Some occasions are elevated by having the right commentator on it.
George isn't doing the Ireland games anymore.
Yeah.
Like we've everyone in this room, our entire lives has been George Hamilton commentating on Ireland games, and for better or worse, I just miss him on it. I have to say, it's nothing to do with Darren Maloney or anything like that, who I think is a great commentator, but I just miss George as the soundtrack of the games, and the fact that he's still working there makes me, if he was retired or gone, you'd be like, fine, we need a new generation. But the fact that he's still there, it's
I
tough,
was wondering when Mick's RTE Corner was going to start, but it's...
I'm not giving out about anyone. I'm saying as a personal viewer.
Do you know what really hit home on that one, Joe, about George Hamilton, though, was that they had a wonderful package before the Ireland against Scotland game, the qualifier for the Women's World Cup. And George was on the commentaries for all the big moments in the times for the Republic of Ireland qualifying for finals. So in a way, I was delighted that he got to do that game, because the Amber Barrett clip will always forevermore, when that's reeling in the ears or that's someone putting a package together in 10, 15 years' time.
Did you see the Barrett clip with the reeling in the ears music over it?
It was amazing.
Oh my God. It already felt
nostalgia just hits you. You're like,
I was like, what an amazing time it was in 2022. Oh wait, I'm here and it's awful. But
What
it seemed
song was
amazing.
it?
The reeling in the ears music.
Oh, okay, which it would never be in reeling in the
No,
ears.
it wouldn't be, but it just worked. It really worked.
it made it feel like a 1990s clip, or
It was like the intro to it.
Yeah.
And it's amazing that music and that clip, it made you think, God, it was just better back then.
But yeah,
happened like last
you know, I don't recognise the songs on the new Reeling in the Years, which just completely changes everything. So you're watching the 90s Reeling in the Years, and it's like, no matter what moment it is, something banal like an Irish election, Bertie elected again, but every song for the entire 24 minutes or whatever, I know every beat of.
Does it mean you can pinpoint the moment that you fall out of popular culture?
Yeah, more or less.
What year was it?
Yeah. I don't know, but it's in the new, whatever the latest series is. At some point, you're like, yeah, this song is just like, they're playing it on the Late Late Show, and it's just like, I've never heard it before. But it changes the entire tone of Reeling in the Years.
Yeah, I'll bet.
So whatever Amber Barrett, when we actually do eventually see that, it's going to be an amazing emotional moment, and the riding of Ireland qualify for the first ever, and then it'll throw to the celebrations afterwards and so on. And I won't recognise the song, and it will completely change the tone.
Yeah, that's an interesting point. They cut the Amber Barrett goal. They had it interwoven with, do you remember the famous, I think it was a journalist who was crying in Italian 90.
Oh, the guy clapping his hands.
in tears at Amber
slow
Barrett.
claps.
Just made, it was brilliant.
That's brilliant.
There are times where Twitter is good. Keen on Twitter says, very simple, white doesn't sell. I feel like the Irish soccer jerseys, the white soccer jerseys sold.
Yeah, the new one's coming up soon as well, so I wonder what they're going to...
Andy in Cork, would I be considered a Luddite for not wearing a national replica shirt because...
He's over the age of 8.
I haven't played for the country. Discuss.
I think Luddite's the wrong word there.
Yeah.
First of all,
There's
it's a
something in that,
technology
though.
issue.
Oh, you should only get to wear the jersey if you've been picked.
So you go to a match and nobody's wearing the Ireland jersey except for Ollie Campbell.
Yeah, kids can wear it. And Ollie Campbell can wear it. Paul O'Connell, he's in the coaching staff. But that, and wouldn't that be cool? That way you could see the 50.
Jesus.
There's your man.
I do like this idea you have to earn the shirt.
And then argue with your dad over who he is and when he played for Ireland.
Yeah.
Yeah. I like that.
I sort of see where Andy's coming from in that. I feel a little bit like...
Define what level, Andy.
Supporters jersey, don't know.
No, it is, of course. That's what no one's there thinking.
No, sorry, I'm not saying that, but I'm saying
We're all the
is
same.
it not fair enough because there's
Supporting
a
the team.
supporters element to it now?
Yeah. It's just...
I don't think Andy's getting the... I think he thought he'd be dismissed out of hand here, but...
Where are you in the start there?
Joe's worrying Canterbury. What do you mean, where am I on it? It's madness. Like you have to earn the jersey before you wear it. What do you mean?
Also, a former international would never wear an Ireland jersey.
Yeah, that's the thing, I think.
Yeah. So we would have no Ireland jerseys except for those colours. You have to earn the number.
Basically, no colour, no booing, no cheer, no atmosphere is what I want on matches.
Yeah. But can we bring back the old rattles that you spun around in circles?
Listen. Lads, I'm literally watching the Spurs game on mute, listening to you lads. Plenty of people do it, says John O'Shea. Fair enough, yeah. There is a case for a fully zoomed out pitch, full view. You can see everything off the ball. Well, that was an option for the Champions League final between Chelsea and Manchester City, and it was a disaster. And I thought, I've been waiting for this forever. And for some reason, I can't remember quite what it was, it just didn't work. I think it was that the stand was just too far away. So to have the full pitch in view at all times.
That was the one in Porto, wasn't it?
Yeah. They tried to do it, and I thought, well, thank God this has finally happened. You can see all 22 players on the pitch. I'm absolutely watching this. And I'd say after 7-8 minutes, I realised, well, this isn't working because you were just too far away from the ball. You couldn't see what was going on.
It's great for someone doing stats. It's not great for someone actually watching the game.
Yeah.
I think it returns to Mick's point as well about it. Like, it's TV. It's like it's meant to be, they're cutting the scenes you need to see. You don't, it's just this raw director's cut of a match where it's just anything's going. It's like, that's not, I presume we're not really attuned to watching that either, even knowing, as much as we all probably think we have a good grasp on football and the different nuances of it, that, we don't actually know.
Well, give yourself some credit. Well, if you go to a game, obviously that's what it's trying to replicate. And it is interesting at times to want to know what's going on the other end of the pitch. And I still think we'll get there. But that test case, 2 years ago, my TV anyway, I couldn't see enough of what was going on with Raheem Sterling with the ball at his feet trying to take on a player and having both goalkeepers.
Okay.
And it was just, everything was way too far away.
It is different than being at the game. I know this sounds stupid, but your TV is still a lot smaller than, even the big huge TVs at HD, than being at the ground. You are literally turning your head or body towards watching Raheem Sterling with the ball. You're not watching the full TV or the full pitch at all times when you're at a game, as much as it wants to replicate that.
I know on Monday Night Football they watch it on a full screen.
They watch the whole thing
all
on
22
the full screen.
players, yeah.
It's interesting. On their big wall.
Yeah. Now it's
Right.
massive, so...
Yeah.
It probably allows.
But again, I'd imagine, I would dare say that with even that massive screen, that probably is a better replica of the stadium. They're not watching all 22 players at all times. They're just watching that angle, if you know what I mean.
Well, and also the key difference is in a TV studio, there'll be 20 other cameras with the close-up of Sterling with the ball at his feet. So they can keep an eye on the big picture and then hone in on the action.
I will grant you, it's a much more enjoyable way to watch hurling. Especially, say, inter-county hurling, if you're talking about that. Just where they really can manipulate the whole of the pitch in such a split-second sort of time. You really do. You really, when you can see it playing out one end of the pitch to the other, it does matter a bit more, I suppose.
The ball can travel so quickly.
It's interesting you bring up GEA, though, because I was thinking to bring it back to the commentators and the need for them. I find in a sport like GEA where what's happening off the ball is important. Like, a good co-commentator in hurling is not spending his time telling you what you've just seen. They're telling you the things that you're not seeing.
The matchups.
They're telling you matchups. They're telling you how so-and-so is switched. They're telling you why that's important. And that's hectic. It's a really, really tough job. Michael Dignan is very, very good at it. I feel like a lot of them they all know that they should be doing it, but it can be tough to kind of, do both jobs, I would imagine. They're still performing and everything else. But that is the key thing for a commentator, because ultimately you are not seeing the full story by just following the ball. In GEA in particular, I think, such a fast-moving sport.
I want to move on. That journalist says a texter during Italia 90 was the late John Healy of the Irish Times. Yeah, name rings a bell, so that's it, yeah. We'll take a very short break. I'll run you through Champions League scores in just a moment and we'll continue a slight tangent. So, latest in the Champions League, still 0-0 between Liverpool and Napoli. Rangers are 2-0 down already at home to Ajax. Elsewhere, Atletico Madrid, who are out already, but they're 2-1 down regardless to Porto in Group B. Bayern and Inter is 0-0. Barcelona 1-0 up away to Victoria Pilsen. And it's still 0-0 in Marseille. Spurs 0, Marseille 0. Son has gone off with an injury. He looked to be limping, maybe his ankle, I think, based on the limp. But confirmation to come. 32 minutes on the clock there. Draw for Spurs is enough.
Full stop now as well, Joe. They've missed out in the Europa League because of that defeat as well. So Bayer Leverkusen have finished ahead of Atletico on head-to-head. So no football after Christmas for Atletico in Europe.
Okay. Email in from Pat. A slight tangent at offtheball.com is where you can get us. So this is lengthy-ish. I'll just give you the gist. I'm fanatical about sports, especially GA and soccer. Lifelong St. Pat supporter. It's an illness with no cure, he says. Like all fans of the beautiful game, I eagerly look forward to the World Cup finals when they come around every 4 years. I'm conflicted about Qatar in December. In November, indeed. I mean, it's on in 3 weeks.
Yeah. Yep. I think the 20th of November, isn't it? Yeah.
Sundays. It starts on a Sunday. FIFA awarding Qatar World Cup hosting duties. It's got to go down as the most corrupt and immoral act ever by any sporting body. FIFA and their corporate sponsors, blinded by their own greed, appear to have looked the other way in terms of Qatar's appalling human rights record. Truly sickening. No amount of FIFA PR propaganda can change that. Ultimately, there is no getting away from the fact that many of the thousands of immigrants employed to work on the stadium and construction, etc., have been exploited, abused, and in many cases have died. People dying just so the world can watch games of football. How twisted is that? He goes on to say, I suspect I'm not the only soccer fan that holds these views. There are more important issues at play than the 64 games of football. Disappointing that none of the national bodies across world football have made any meaningful stand against the travesty. By that I mean boycotting the tournament. I'm convinced that if one of the larger federations had made this stand, others would have followed, thereby probably forcing FIFA to seek an alternative host. It's now probably too late for that type of action. So I'm calling on everyone to vote with their remote controls and simply don't watch the World Cup. I know it's a big ask and it's something that would be painful to football fans, myself included, but that pain is nothing compared to the pain experienced by those exploited by the Qatari state. I am aware of the counter-arguments. Many will argue sports washing, financial support of sports bodies and sports clubs from questionable sources like Newcastle, Live Golf, etc. is simply part of the landscape. But I think a line has been crossed in Qatar. Perhaps if TV viewing of the tournament is boycotted in large numbers, it might inflict some financial pain in FIFA and or their sponsors, which might in turn prompt them to operate more ethically in the future. In summary, I think the masses should make a stand. Don't watch the games, don't bet on the games, don't buy World Cup memorabilia. I ask that you simply read out this email on Off the Ball, which hopefully will at least prompt some people to seriously consider this issue. Yours in sport, Pat, is the email.
What do you think?
Well, I'd agree with them totally. I just don't think it's going to happen.
Yeah, I don't feel much the same. There's some points in there that are just like you say them out loud, like the how can we come to a point where people are dying to put on a football tournament? You know, it's like
6,500.
I think so. Yeah, exactly. Not just like a couple of people.
Yeah.
I think we will get. I think we are at a point where some people, like, it's never going to be the majority. It's not like it, but I think some people are just completely turned off by it. You know, and I have to say, we're going to cover it. I don't think we have a choice. I think we're in a position where.
Do we not have a choice?
I think we're in a position where we're a radio show, multimedia, radio show about like that covers the sport that's happening. I don't think we have a choice not to talk about the World Cup as it's on. I think that ultimately that is our listeners to decide whether they want to hear it or not. But for me, I don't think that the fact that it's a football World Cup, it's happening, I think we have to cover it. I think we will also endeavour, as we have all along, to cover all aspects of it, and that includes this very conversation, right? That's just my personal opinion. But in terms of not watching it as a fan, I have to say I'm certainly not as excited as I normally would be for a World Cup. I feel incredibly conflicted about the whole thing. It's gross.
Yeah.
This is probably the word that jumps to mind for it. Like, the whole thing is disgusting.
The Australian national team, I think, put it extremely well in the video which they released late last week, whereby they looked at what the legacy of the World Cup is going to be, and they were saying that the legacy really should be, when there's an opportunity now to perhaps discuss change within Qatar, would be the idea that workers will be allowed to unionise, that what's happened now would never be allowed to happen again, that there will be discussions about LGBT rights, even though they expect that they're probably not going to change over the course of a tournament, and that maybe FIFA would learn about perhaps the way that they've awarded the tournament this time around. From us, I think we can do both. I think we can talk about what Neymar, Messi, all these guys do on the pitch, and at the same time talk about the much wider debate. And I think the journalists who go to Qatar for the World Cup are very, very likely to do that as well. It is incredibly troubling when you see some of the reaction from the journalists from Qatar who spoke at the weekend, and particularly was on social media, about the idea that, people who are gay that go to the tournament will not be welcome within Qatar, and that was being welcomed by some of the journalists there. I think that has to be something that has to be discussed in a much wider sense around the World Cup. We can't just be saying, right, we care what happened in Group G today, but it is possible to discuss that and also discuss what's on the field simultaneously.
Yeah, I must say, as it gets closer and closer, I'm just so appalled. Even your phrase there, the Australians saying it can never happen again. It's 2022. We're not talking about, stampedes at stadiums or some ancient phenomenon that we've outgrown. I mean, it was just so abhorrent the way it was bought, and then the way FIFA sponsors, everybody just sat in their hands. Journalists did actually, I know it's easy to criticise the media, but some of the work The Guardian and others did was actually exceptional. To go in there, to find out what's happening, to tell the world about it, scream about it. And still, what have FIFA and sponsors done? And now here we are, and it's just going to happen. I mean, if I had annual leave left, I think I'd take it. Knowing, I really...
Yeah, I understand
the thought
that,
of having to talk about the football as if it's in any way important is just grim. I'm going to be faking it across this month. I really am. I'm going to be the World Cup final, let's talk about it. But I mean, the whole thing's disgusting, really. And I just can't believe it's been allowed unfold year after. We started doing stories. The Guardian started doing this in 2014.
Yeah.
And how many thousands of people died since? And then the LGBTQ
and we
situation.
would have talked about it. I remember sitting in a meeting when, in off the ball meeting, in the meeting room behind us, when somebody was telling us about that story and talking about the migrant deaths.
Yeah.
And going, sorry, what? It was that much of a bolt. You're talking nearly 10 years ago.
Yeah.
This, and
certainly 8. And I thought in 14 when that first emerged.
It was 8 years ago. I just mean in terms of...
I thought it would be sorted out very quickly then. That actually FIFA sponsors couldn't stand over it. They would go in with bags of cash, build proper accommodation, ensure good working hours, sort the whole thing out almost overnight. And they didn't.
No.
That is the staggering thing from 2014. They didn't sort it out.
Yeah.
And now, this fiasco is about to be unfurled. All the colour and all the propaganda, all the PR. I think if I wasn't working in it and had to do it, I'd say sod them all.
I'm kind of feeling the same.
Keep a very casual eye on it, just out of who won the World Cup, or who, if there's a big game, maybe watch it, maybe. But even then, with sort of an air of this is all grotesque, really.
You said as it was getting closer, you're getting more perturbed. But I'm finding that as of 2 or 3 months ago, I'm like, you know what? When the World Cup comes around, not that we'll forget all this, but we'll get into it, and the closer it gets, the less I want this to happen.
I think it's because as it happens, there's this sense that they're after getting away with it, the whole thing.
Yeah.
Do you know?
Is it Pat, the emailer?
Yeah.
Sorry, I've forgotten his name, but he made one good point there, and this is what I thought would happen. I thought that a big organisation, a Germany, an England, a whoever, would make a stand and say, we're not going. And I thought that the dominoes would fall from there, and that had to happen 2 or 3 years ago. And it would whatever, give the tournament to England.
Yeah.
Maybe there's not, that's not a great thing either, but it's better than this. And I thought it would happen, and it just never did. Nobody took that step. And I really do think that if Germany didn't go, for example, I think it would have been too big a statement, too big a protest for others to follow.
Yeah, because this isn't
even... I don't think you could justify going.
Sure.
If somebody as big and a chance to win the World Cup type country didn't also.
This isn't even history's going to judge this one badly kind of thing.
the present is judging it badly.
We've been judging it badly for the last 8 years.
It's quite grim to the effect though that it doesn't. It'll mean nothing. FIFA's too big to fail in this regard. There's nothing. It just doesn't. It's quite empty. Even it's not empty talking about it because we're talking about something, I suppose, real lives and stuff. But from a perspective of changing,
Precisely from perspective of change,
we
might as well be whistling for these 15 minutes.
It won't happen.
Yeah.
Nothing like that'll happen. I know you say about Germany or whatever else. I'm not even convinced by that. That's not where FIFA's interests are. It's not the sort of voting blocks they need to.
I meant others would follow. I meant England couldn't justify going if Germany didn't, and so on.
Maybe I'm very cynical. I think another team would step in and play.
Yeah, I think in a heartbeat.
But there'd be such an asterisk beside the thing. And I think another country, like if one big nation, one former winner withdrew, I think the pressure then on England to withdraw, even from its own media, would be overwhelming. Even if the FA deep down didn't want to, or even if the players...
It's a different circumstance, but look at Denmark walking in 1992 to replace Yugoslavia.
But for the same reason that we'll be talking
different.
about it.
No, it's totally different, but I think there's plenty of countries who didn't qualify who would happily step in.
But there was nothing wrong with that tournament. Like that was a tournament in Sweden. This is a different situation in that Yugoslavia self-combusted and could not take part in an international tournament. That spot was there. I don't know. I know what you mean.
My thinking is more though, if one big country was to pull out, I don't necessarily think there'd be a domino that others would pull out.
I would have liked to see it. I know what you mean. I'm probably being a little bit simplistic on it or idealistic or whatever, but I really, and I thought it would be Germany. I don't know why I have this. Maybe it's just because they were making the right noises for long enough,
We'll never know now, I suppose.
Exactly. I don't know. It's so grim. Like, we're talking about the last World Cup of Messi. We're talking about the last World Cup of Ronaldo. Messi in particular, who some people feel like it's coming around in a way that...
You can't tie them in. They're profiting from the same stuff.
No, I'm not. I agree with you. I'm saying...
It's a nostalgia thing of it then, like.
Yeah.
Screw Messi and his holiday in Qatar.
No, you're right. And look, I mean, he plays for Qatar. I'm not defending Messi here. I'm talking to you about... We romanticise the World Cup. We've been watching it every 4 years. I remember even, like, as late as 2010. You were there in 2014, you know what I mean? And there was lots of problems there. We were doing pieces on the show. You were sending back pieces about favelas and everything like that, and all that was wrong with Brazil. But it was still, we were doing that and covering it well, but we were also able to talk about a football tournament. Whereas now it's like, what I'm saying is, from a pure sporting point of view, we're at the last World Cup of an era of Messi, Ronaldo, everything else that's happening.
No, you're right. And like Brazil was all like the corruption in Brazil. I mean, that was like an exercise in the transfer of public money to private hands. I mean, the things that went on there were absolutely extraordinary. I mean, so like you want to see the breakdown of cost for different stadiums and how much like a hand dryer cost, thousands of euro for that hand dryer. So I mean, what went on in that kind of a scenario was grim. But we almost just take that as, well, look, that's just the reality of human nature, and that sort of happens around most of these events. This is on a different stratosphere.
Absolutely, yeah.
Different stratosphere.
Yeah.
I appreciate the migrant workers definitely brings it to a totally different level. But did we feel uncomfortable about 2018 when Russia hosted the World Cup?
It's a good question. I think in retrospect, not uncomfortable enough, clearly.
I think people just didn't like it. They just didn't. They thought it was a crap place for a World Cup and lots of other reasons. But I don't think we looked into it enough. No, absolutely not.
And I suppose Europe at large, I mean, even at a political level, I know Crimea had happened, but there was still a degree of almost being asleep at the wheel a little bit with Putin and just how insane he is.
Yeah, I think as well just the fact that Russia had not really been punished at that point sufficiently for the state-sponsored doping as well, and still got to host major events Sochi and like the World Cup. And
no, you're right. Maybe there's a degree of compensation going on that, well, we've let one of these slide, and Russia should have been examined more. So perhaps, there's a bit of that.
I think we'd all be a lot more comfortable if Australia, who were likely to win that bid back in 2011, were getting ready to host the World Cup next year. Yeah. They get the Women's World Cup instead. Yeah,
I mean, I guess maybe there'll be some kind of unexpected protest by individual players at the tournament, and that'll all
there was in the World Cup final as well in 2018.
There was?
Yeah. Wasn't there onto the pitch? I forget the name of the group.
Oh, right, okay.
There was definitely something though in the final.
But not by players.
Oh, no, sorry. Protests around it. Oh, protests by players. No, well, I suppose during the 2021 didn't It wasn't Mats Hummels. Who's the German player who wore the rainbow something when they're playing Hungary?
Okay. Some of the texts in. I watched every World Cup since 1974. I won't be watching this one, as hard as that's going to be, says one texter. I already wasn't going to watch any of it. Even Ireland were in it, says somebody else. Hi lads, I agree with everything you're saying about the Qatar World Cup, but I have an 11-year-old mad kid at home. The World Cup every 4 years gives my son and myself very few opportunities to enjoy it together as father and kid and get involved with the Panini sticker albums and the wall charts and the like. I can't ignore this World Cup, says another texter. And
that one is, I think, that one I think is where people will really struggle, because the World Cup is that thing. It is that communal football watching. It is a unique every 4 year experience.
Yeah.
I think there is something. Like I remember watching
sure
the World Cup with my dad, etc.
Upset your 11-year-old either with.
No, absolutely. You know, and that's what I mean. And it's like there's something like, look, kids aren't even watching football in the way they used to. You know, I think a World Cup is important in that regard, to come around every now and then. So it's like the games every day and watch it in a way. So you're not just like waiting on paywall TV or watching clips on YouTube, etc.
Can you anticipate the feeling we're all going to have 45 minutes after the World Cup final? I'm dreading that feeling.
Was it for this?
I'm dreading that feeling. There's going to be such a sense of what an absolute thundering disgrace all that was.
Yeah.
You know, like, as whoever parades around with the World Cup trophy and Grant, there'll be just a sense of.
I mean, the optimistic side is you're hopeful that some kind of proper compensation package is put in place for the 7,000 people who lost their lives as migrant workers putting these white elephant stadiums together. Like, some of these stadiums are being taken apart and moved elsewhere.
Why do you think there'll be some kind of package now?
Why will it be any better now that
the pressure has been on for the last 6-7 years? The pressure could not have been more real for the last 6-7-8 years. The worry of a Germany, as Mick said, pulling out because things weren't being addressed over the last 6-7 years. Like, honestly, as soon as this thing is over, that's why I mentioned that feeling you're going to have after the full-time whistle goes. Migrant workers, like, good luck. Any leverage is gone.
Yeah, and like you would wonder, obviously the regime in Qatar have argued that they have brought in reforms over the last 2 years in particular, and the feeling is that the reforms have not gone far enough.
Or haven't been enforced in certain instances.
As you say, the leverage for any type of reforms past December the 18th is probably very, very
long. They're fighting
gone.
them already over like cause of death and everything like that. It's disgusting. Like, it really is awful. Can I ask a question on, we're talking about Messi there, right?
Yeah.
So
holiday in Qatar.
Yeah,
Messi.
look, holiday in Qatar, work for Qatar, like, loads of...
Works for the Saudi foreign office now at this stage, for the tourism department as well.
Yeah, loads of moral issues, right, that I don't think are even questionable at this stage. And yet there's a part of you that sees a footballer that you've watched for his entire career and probably admire more than any other footballer in history. No, but so you did...
I hope it doesn't... I hope this World Cup's a disaster for him.
Yeah. I don't know how I feel, because he's been my favourite ever footballer from a purely sporting point of view. I like the man less and less. The more I hear of him, the more he does, right? But I don't know where to draw the line. That, like, I mean, there's obviously questions about Ronaldo. There's been accusations about Ronaldo, etc., like that, you know. And then there's also 1 or 1A as best footballers of all time. It is just it's an interesting way to think. It's just an interesting question, I think, because I don't know how I feel about that, because there's admiration as a sport outside of the person, but I don't know. I find that harder and harder, I suppose.
The art of the artist.
Yes, exactly, yeah.
Marseille have taken the lead against Spurs, we should say.
Yeah, so Mbembe has just scored for them, and Marseille have been all over Spurs for the last few minutes as well, so Spurs need at least a point if they're going to qualify and look under a bit of pressure at the moment.
Antonio Conte in the stands. He was obviously sent off after the VAR protest last week, so he's been seen regularly on camera muttering to himself, and as things stand, Spurs in a bit of trouble. Son has gone off. We're just about to go half time, 7 minutes of out of time in that game. Somebody says best commentary ever. Oh, this was on Jonathan Liu's piece about having no commentators, was from 1989 Ireland against Northern Ireland game. Ireland 3-0 up, South Terrace in full voice singing Que Sera Sera. Jimmy McGee paused, let the crowd sing, and then said at the end that Doris Day never sang like that, which is a pretty good line. If I'm watching at home, I'd rather listen to the commentator than he just giving out about the referee, says somebody else, as in, I guess, the crowd. Oh, sugar, I didn't have time. I meant to ask, in light of Seamus Power winning for a second time on the PGA Tour. So he's in an incredibly rarefied atmosphere of multiple PGA Tour winner. Ireland has produced very few golfers at that ilk. I was saying to you guys earlier, like Seamus Power could walk down Grafton Street, probably wouldn't be recognised once. Maybe if he was in his golf gear, he might be recognised 5 times.
Recognised with the hat on, probably, yeah.
But definitely, I wouldn't say unloved, because I think people say, geez, good on him, and you know, he wouldn't be unpopular in the slightest, but probably underappreciated sports person in Ireland. Is there anyone else more underappreciated? I can't think of anyone just now. Don't say Paul O'Donovan. He's now crossed the line into the most appreciated, underappreciated sports person.
My slightly underappreciated person is Damien Duff, because we always talk about Robbie and we always talk about Roy.
Duffer, no, come
Duffer, 100 caps, 2 Premier League titles. He does not get the same positive PR that some of the other guys of his generation
I think he gets more positive PR than Robbie Keane. If anyone's underappreciated, it's Robbie Keane.
Robbie Keane, 68 goals.
Yeah.
68 goals.
Yeah, I think
Nobody ever talks about him.
Keane is way more underappreciated
the only
than
time
Duffer.
we talk
I think
about
people
Robbie-
love Duffer, and there's a likability issue in certain quarters with Robbie.
The only time we talk positively about Robbie is when we say Robbie Keane's don't grow on trees. There's no actual analysis of the fact that he got 68 goals and the next best is 21.
See, I think he is heavily appreciated, because even if you don't particularly like him, people will say, we never were able to replace Robbie Keane. Or if Robbie Keane was here, even with an average Republic of Ireland team, Robbie Keane would score the goals that would make Ireland a better team.
No one says you can't replace Duffer.
Exactly.
He's loved, though.
He is beloved. Don't get
Beloved.
me wrong. But he can be a bit underappreciated for his talents.
John O'Shea?
Yeah.
John O'Shea had an incredible career. Won, I don't even know how many titles with Man United, won the Champions League.
He's never the
Has
star of those
over
Man United
100
teams,
caps for
though,
Ireland. Yeah, but like Seamus Power isn't the star of the PGA Tour, but he's
Well, John O'Shea would get recognised going down in college.
Well, yeah, okay,
even if
yeah,
he
but
wasn't
he's-
his Man United jersey.
no, okay, but okay. Do you have anyone else?
Don't think so. Seamus Power would be right up there.
I know for you, Arthur.
Poor Fintan McCarthy.
Oh, that's fair. Yeah. You can't say Paul O'Donovan anymore, so Fintan McCarthy's the answer now.
That is fair. That is fair.
Paddy Barnes is one of very, 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 I think 2 Irish people ever. Paul O'Donovan being the other one to win Olympic medals at 2 separate Olympic Games.
Yeah.
I think that is something that,
that's true.
again, you would recognise Paddy Barnes walking down the road, but I don't know if people truly appreciate how, elite a boxer he was for as long as he was.
It came up on the rugby chat with Rory there. I don't think he's underappreciated, because everybody knows how good he certainly was at his peak, but recency bias. Conor Murray was across the Sunday papers, and there was a line, I think it was in Peter Riley's piece, that as he's about to win his 100 cap for Ireland, he's never been more uncherished by the sporting public. And he was making the point, like, when World Rugby did the team of the decade for the 2010s, there were only 4 players from the Northern Hemisphere on it. It was like O'Driscoll, Sergio Parise, I think maybe George North, and Murray. Sexton didn't even get onto it. So he was at his peak, unbelievable, and yet there's probably a sense now of, Conor Murray slows it down, box kick, which is a touch unfair, really, when you think about it.
He's maybe been a victim of Ireland changing style a little bit too.
Big time.
That now everyone likes Jameson Gibson Park because they enjoy the rugby that Ireland are currently playing, and people forget that Conor Murray was the starting Lions scrum half.
Yeah, there might be 1 or 2 rugby guys from that era actually that might not have been, like, I know Murray's still on, but like, you had Sexton, O'Connell, all these, like, O'Driscoll even. Like, does Jamie Heaslip get enough credit for how good a rugby player he was? Jamie Heaslip was someone that always stood out to me when I went to a game.
Yeah.
Like more so than maybe on the TV or so. And like
the 09 lines.
He's on
incredible.
TV and he's the character he is, and he had that podcast tweet before. And I think people forget that Jamie Heaslip was like one of Ireland's best ever players. Like.
Yeah.
Does Heaslip get credit for not actually making a podcast after that? Like, given the tweet was clearly set up to start a podcast, then maybe he's like, right, I've taken the feedback and just like, I'll do one.
That must have been one of the worst. Like, talk about feedback on Twitter we were talking about earlier. That's a don't send a tweet one. Like,
Yeah, don't ever tweet is
Full
the
circle.
main message there. Are we pretty
Rory
much done?
is underappreciated, somebody says.
Rory McIlroy?
Yeah.
Well, listen, absolutely. So underappreciated. It's beyond belief.
We just don't know how to appreciate someone like that, though.
Yeah, I know what you mean. He feels like a distant...
Like, even I don't think, I'm not
figure.
sure to what degree, I know with Roy Keane, the mania has always kind of been there, certainly as long as I've been kind of
I know we appreciate Roy.
aware.
No, he's appreciated.
Yeah, no, but I even mean like for his ability.
Yeah, I think he is.
I appreciate now, but like in general, I don't know. Has that appreciation always been as vivid in how? Like I don't know. Maybe something else, but it doesn't.
No, I think Keane was like Man United, the most supported team in the country, captain of them.
But I suppose what I'm kind of thinking is he was bigger than that. So he was a continental giant, if you know what I mean. Like it wasn't just a best midfielder in the Premier League. It kind of did go further than that.
I know we're slightly short in time, but is the reason that we
really short in time
don't hold Rory McIlroy in his high esteem as we should? Is
here we go.
We use the yardstick of Rory McIlroy as to what we expected would happen after he won his 4th major. So in a way, Rory McIlroy should be an absolutely massive star, #1 in the world, the guy who's gone up against Live Golf, tremendously consistent, winning the PGA Tour title a couple of times in recent years, despite not getting more majors, because we thought that Rory McIlroy would be at a different position than where he is now.
Yes,
that's fair.
We made it unfair.
That's fair.
We thought he'd have 10 by now.
I was watching an old Ryder Cup and Paul McGinley was on it. I was like, Paul McGinley, we always thought was like below Clark, below Harrington, McIlroy coming through. Paul McGinley played about 5 Ryder Cups.
Yeah.
It's like, you kind of, like, what you think now how far away a lot of the Irish golfers would be from that.
He's in the world's top 20.
That was absolutely underappreciated.
Yeah. That's a fair point. Okay, we got to go. That was a slight tangent. We will be back in the next week or two. We're certainly going to do it every 2 weeks if we can. So thanks to Arthur, Mick and Will.